This episode of the Fire Dog Podcast is supported by AOS Services, the one-stop shop for firefighting equipment compliance built for the DoD. At AOS Services, they help military fire departments stay mission-ready with customized programs that bundle everything from SCBAs and compressors to hoses, ladders, PPE care, rescue gear, and more. Their teams work worldwide, so whether you're stateside or overseas, they've got you covered. For all your firefighting equipment compliance needs, visit AOSServicesInc.com to learn more. This episode of the Fire Dog Podcast is supported by Roll Call Coins. Founded by a 24-year Air Force firefighter veteran, they understand that a coin represents more than just an event. It represents a story. Using 3D modeling and custom textures, Roll Call has moved beyond generic designs to create premium, standout coins. Whether you're honoring a department or branding a business, they make the process effortless. Start your design today at rollcallcoins.com and let your coin stand out in the stack.
This is the Fire Dog Podcast.
The views and opinions presented on today's episode are those of the speaker and do not necessarily represent the views of the Department of Defense or the United States Air Force.
Welcome, my name is Matt Wilson, and thank you for listening to episode 69 of the Fire Dog Podcast. Today's episode explores how real-world experience and recognizing the limits of your own knowledge can fundamentally change the way you approach training and decision-making. Our new co-host, Austin, recounts some calls he's encountered so far throughout his career, from significant vehicle accidents and structure fires to aircraft crashes and fatal incidents. But this conversation isn't about the calls, it's about how those experiences exposed gaps in training, shaped Austin's approach to learning, and influenced the way he thinks about developing firefighters and preparing them to perform under stress. We discuss stress response, cognitive load, skill acquisition, and why effective training should progress from mechanics to consistency to intensity. Whether you're a firefighter, an instructor, an officer, this conversation offers lessons that can be applied to the way you train, prepare, and make decisions when it matters most. It is my pleasure to highlight the experiences of our new co-host, Austin Perry. What's up, Austin?
What's going on, Matt?
I'm happy to be on here with you in Austin and Matt host-only episode for the first time with Austin Perry and myself.
It's been a while, actually, huh?
Yeah, man, it has been a while. Life gets in the way. You procrastinate. When I say you procrastinate, I mean I procrastinate.
Oh, I'm right there with you, big dog.
We're making it happen.
As we were talking before the show, but trying to coordinate between three people sometimes isn't the easiest thing to do.
No, man. And I think most of the listeners probably understand. With life, things are tough. But we're keeping the podcast rolling. Happy to have you on as a host, man. I'm hoping to pass the baton, man. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Keep this thing rolling, you know?
Which
as I fade off into the sunset, potentially.
Yeah, in the twilight of your podcasting days. But yeah, kind of the point, I guess, more or less. We do have a topic picked out, but just to come on here and say what's up and kind of, I guess, more or less share with the listeners of like the vision moving forward and, kind of like why I enjoyed or wanted to get into podcasting was actually really just because I've learned so much from, fire service podcasts and had a big impact on my career. So the chance to be able to do that, especially for our career field, is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's one of those mediums that's it's necessary. You know what I'm saying? Like, people are using AI to help them with their lives and in their jobs. It's like, to me, a podcast is kind of that kind of technology where it's like, you gotta get on board with it. You know what I mean? Like
1000%. It's like, it's good news, basically.
Yeah, it's like, it's a modern day equivalent of reading a book. I mean, reading a book is still relevant and you can still do that. People can still write their thoughts. You go read what they have to say. Here's another way to consume other people's thoughts, except there's no real quality assurance. You know what I'm saying? We could just get on here and say whatever we want, but it's cool, man. You can live vicariously through others, hear their experiences in the fire service. What kind of calls do they go on? What do they know? I mean, I think, most people know that inherently.
Yeah. I'm laughing to myself because I was just talking to somebody at work about reading books and stuff, and I've recently, as I've gotten older, kind of had to force myself into getting into reading. It's not necessarily my favorite thing, but I was like, if I really want to pay attention and really let it sink in, I'll listen to the audiobook while I have the actual physical copy in front of myself.
Have
Because
somebody read it for you.
dude, I'm so ADHD sometimes. I'm like, I have to read a page 3 times to actually make it stick. So like when I have it, yeah, when I have that in my ear, it makes it kind of stick to the wall a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're just a product of the times, right? We're so used to kind of the instantaneous, I don't want to say gratification, but instantaneous results. The internet and social media and everything is instantaneous, man. We could go down the street and get whatever we need at the store, right? So when you got to take the time to read word for word versus somebody reading it to you, I don't know. So I force myself personally to read books. I feel like I get more out of it. I've talked to some close friends who are, I'm like, who ask, do you do the audiobooks? And of course I have, and I still do, but they do it exclusively. I'm like, can you pay attention the whole time? Like, oh, no, I probably pick up about 80% of it or 70% of it or whatever the case. I'm like, man, I want to get 100% of it. Like I want to maximize the effectiveness. And so I got to sit down with no distractions. I can't listen to audiobooks when I'm running, when I'm walking. Like because I'm looking at other things, I'm distracted with my thoughts. I have to sit down with a book and read it, man. That's just my personal thing. But
if I really want, I'd just get out and start highlighting, make it stick.
just highlight the whole
But
page.
yeah, well, that was a good chapter, man. But yeah, no, I agree for sure. For kind of going off on a side tangent, but yeah, if I really like want it to stick, even with like stuff at work, man, like packages or stuff. If I'm reading, if I really need to like concentrate on, I'll print it out. I'll print it out because reading off a screen just doesn't do it for me.
There's nothing better than the hard copy. I
Good
sound old
old-fashioned
when I say that, but I don't.
paper, man.
I tried it even back in my company officer NCO days. I tried the digital stuff, man. That was a thing 10 years ago, right?
Mhm.
And I tried it. I did it, and I always end up coming back. I always end up printing the stuff out. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Bring back paper checkout sheets, dude.
Hashtag.
I'm gonna make a hat or something that says that because I hate this digital stuff. It's too easy,
PS
man.
tracks and all that.
Dude, it drives me crazy. They're just fucking.
Yeah, you can sit in the kitchen with your legs up and just.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you could theoretically take the notebook and do the same thing with a pen, but
Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe I'm biased because that's how it was when I was a brand new guy too. But had to get the little clipboard out there and go through each compartment and check it. And it was like oddly satisfying to do that as well.
but some technology is good. Some, like podcasts,
Yes.
it's one of those steps forward that actually is beneficial. Again, you can live vicariously through people. So here we are, man. We're going to talk about what you have in store for us.
Yeah, man. So just like a brief little intro, I've obviously been on a couple times. People, hopefully might know who I am. But as far as like kind of like pre-military, life, just a brief little synopsis and then, kind of get into, everyone probably knows where I've only been to 2 bases, but kind of get into some of the stuff that, I got into at Shaw and Eielson. And then which kind of really led me to looking at some like instruction, some training methodologies, and how to just really start to study some of those things of how to be like a better coach, a better trainer, and then also kind of some of the decision making. That I nerd out on some of that stuff, but it really has come from real instances or real experiences that I've reflected on to kind of, lead me down that path. So starting off basically pre-military. So I was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I lived there for about 3 or 4 years, then moved back to Memphis, Tennessee, where I pretty much spent the rest of my, until I was like 19. Yeah, because I joined the Air Force right at 20. So I live with just my dad, single parent. Grew up playing sports, the normal run of the mill. I wrestled for a year. I played football was my main sport. Played that since I was in like 10, I think. Played all the way through high school. And then I played basketball on the side just for fun, for church league, just for me and my buddies.
Who
Got a
hasn't,
team
man?
to. Yeah, man, it's good stuff. Um, but mostly contact sports were kind of my jam. Um, and then kind of really banked on going to school. Believe it or not, didn't really know what I wanted to do. That had no clear path to the military, although it's very deep in my family. Both my granddads were World War II veterans. Most of my cousins have served in the Air Force. One of my cousins is a retired senior master sergeant, boom operator. Um, had another cousin that was a Air Force medic. So, anyways, so that's kind of like where
It's
the
in the blood.
ideas, yep, kind of stem from. And so, anyways, when school didn't pan out, and it turns out that colleges aren't really looking for 5'7",
Somebody with CTE.
yeah, five
A little
seven
bit
white guys
TMS.
that play strong safety. um, um, that kind of just like I was just kind of bouncing around from job to job. Ended up getting in some unofficial trouble, which is luckily didn't hinder my uh, path to the military. But that was kind of like really the turning point of like, I need to start doing something with my life. So then I basically said, I need to get out. If for you people that don't know, Memphis is kind of a little bit of a rough city. So I needed to get out of that environment. And so my mom lives in Colorado, and I hit her up, and she was like more than happy to, uh, you know, me and my mom have a good relationship. I would go visit my whole life and whatnot. Just never officially lived with her. So she was more than happy to take me on and then kind of help me. I mean, day one, which shout out to mom too. Like day one off the plane, taking me to the recruiting office and
Oh,
getting that
really?
whole thing. Oh yeah, she wasn't playing around. So, anyways, then transitioning, made it through, do basic, do tech school, just the same as anyone. Um, and then landed my first base, Shaw Air Force Base, 2016. And then I PCS from there, in 2023. Yeah, so I did right at 7 years, or I think it was just shy of 7 years, six and some change. I think I think I was maybe like a couple weeks from doing 7 years at Shaw. Um, Loved every minute of it, man. I truly actually went through and deleted every assignment preference off my dream sheet because it was Shaw or die, man, for a long time. And I think anybody that has ever been stationed there or has met someone that's been stationed there can kind of contest to that mindset. It can be good, but it can also be a little bit arrogant sometimes. But it's
Yeah, there's a
all a
couple
good book.
places like that out there. If you do time there, the experience is
Mhm.
great. You almost forget I don't want to say forget, but the other responsibilities of an Air Force firefighter kind of go to the
Mhm.
wayside, right? Like, we've all been through that, I think, depending on where you've been stationed. But
Yeah, and I think it's easy to overlook when you're viewing that from that lens too, of like people don't know what they don't know. And it's not necessarily their fault that they haven't had the
no,
same experience that you have. Um, and so it took me a long time to understand that and get that message through my head. But
well, here's the
to
thing, man. A young 20-year-old people, right? First experience as quote unquote adults.
Mhm.
They join the Air Force. They're thrusted into the fire service in the Air Force, and we do all hazard response. We're a fire department just as much as a municipality is a fire department, right? So you
Mhm.
invest so much of your time through getting certifications and through training and effort that wearing a uniform is it's almost tertiary to what you're doing day to day, right? I'm trying to be the best firefighter. I'm responding on trucks every day. Like I'm working 48 hours on, 48 hours off, just like any other firefighter. I just so happen to be in a uniform, right? So I don't blame anybody for falling into that mind frame because they've invested in trying to be the best firefighter. So it's completely understandable to me. Whereas the Marine Corps, I think, is better with the service connectedness because they, from day one, tell them that you're a Marine first and you just so happen to be a firefighter as a side hustle, right? So it's just a little bit different. I think that makes us potentially more well-rounded firefighters as Air Force firefighters. But of course, it comes at a cost. You know what I mean? Like the Air Force becomes your side hustle.
It's a very and you've talked about it multiple times. I think it's an age-old struggle of balancing those two things, and um, it can be difficult sometimes. And trying to when one starts to tip the scale, you got to kind of try and bring it back, and balance it out.
Yeah, I could talk ad nauseum about it, man.
Yeah, I mean it's a good topic. But jumping back to showing up as a new guy at Shaw, um, I didn't really know, which is funny because I'm like so encapsulated and probably maybe borderline have a unhealthy obsession with it now currently, but didn't really know what the fire service was at all or had. I'm a first generation firefighter. I don't have any family members that are remotely close to it. Didn't have really any understanding of like what it really even meant to be in the fire service. So then just getting thrusted into Shaw, like you said, of like being at one of these high tempo bases of like I never thought in a million years at 20 years old that I would be, learning how to, egress pilots and shut down F-16s and responding to house fires and cutting people out of cars and responding to CPRs and like, just the tempo was just so like crazy off rip, which was, but within that and within that environment, like it really made me love it, like and then I really truly too, I mean, I can't thank these guys enough, but like I had some of the best like fire fire oriented mentors that a young airman could really have, man. Like Captain Nick Myers, old Whit Dotson was a lieutenant at the time, and my station captain Mike Wu, man, those guys were awesome. They really, really like showed me what good information was. Led me to like, anytime I had a question, or there would be multiple times where like, you know, I would be curious about a subject, and Whit would be like, "You need to listen to this guy," and that dude's just the subject matter expert on like whatever topic it is. And so like just really and then like kind of really showing you like what a good coach is like. And so like when you can start to like differentiate when someone really knows what they're talking about and when someone's just kind of like trying to because maybe they're in a position of authority, which is can be, it's good to know because you obviously want to know when someone's maybe not being as upfront with their experience or not, but it also that's dangerous for a young airman to kind of become a little bit arrogant. So I was a little bit of a knucklehead when I was a senior airman.
It's part of it, man.
Yeah. So
nobody's born with humility. It's something that you learn. You know what I mean? You got to be taught in some cases.
Your boss taught me some humility when I got back from my first deployment. Put me in stuck me in old dispatch to knock the ego down a little bit, but shout out to Chief Tross. I needed that little knockdown. But Whit though, he really pressed me to or encouraged me to be a volunteer firefighter too, which I really benefit or I kind of like contribute that to being like one of the best decisions I ever made. And he would just always refer to like, hey, it's just sets and reps, man. It's just more sets, it's more reps, it's more calls. And so, I did that for 6 years. So I just basically was already at a high tempo base and just doubled my call volume at a very young age. And the way that system kind of works too is I just have my little pager and I have my little bunker pants and coat and helmet in my trunk of my car or the bed of my truck, and I would just pull up in someone's front lawn to their house being on fire, or just pull off on the side of the road and then like go cut somebody out of a car. Like, so I could
You
basically
embrace the
choose.
jolly volley culture, huh?
Oh, for sure. It's so
Did you have
much
the
fun.
light on the truck too, man?
No, I never got that deep, but I definitely did not not abide by some traffic laws. So I would always do the classic, like I would just draft up behind the engine and I would just follow them to the call if I could. But yeah, man, it's a good time. And so I guess what I was getting at though is I could just I could pick what calls I wanted to go to. And so like I already respond to fire alarms, and maybe this is a bad mindset, but this was just I'm a career guy. Um, so like I didn't necessarily need to like go to medical calls and go to like, fire alarms and some of the maybe lower hanging fruit. But if somebody was trapped in a car or if it was confirmed fire, like I was going. And so that was a lot of fun, man. Also with Shaw too, I got to kind of, and you maybe got to I hear all the old heads talk about the rescue truck era and like the golden days, and when the Air Force used to run rescue and all that. But I really did feel like I got to live the kind of tail end of that era, because that was one of the hot trucks at that base for sure. Kind of had an accelerated progression more or less. As most bases that have mutual aid, typically those positions are like sought after, and they, chiefs got to like burn sage and like say throw some holy water on you and stuff before you're allowed to go outside the gate. But we had some guys get in trouble, and we had some guys get out, and it was kind of like, well, who's gonna be the guy? And so I got lucky. I got to go to rescue tech as a one striper, believe it or not, which is not usually typical. I don't even think I had my 5 level yet. I just was luck of the draw. And so anyway, so they kind of started looking at me for that, and entrusted me with being the primary driver. So I pretty much did that for like 4 or 5 years. Just wouldn't say I was always on it, but there was a good 90% chance of like you looked at the schedule, if it wasn't a Kelly Day, shift or something like that, that I was going to be driving the rescue truck with, whatever officer.
Well, it's a testament to your work ethic, your ability. They want someone capable in that truck. That's how it was, at least. It's funny that you mentioned that you were one striper in rescue tech, man. I went as a 2 striper.
Yeah.
And at the time, and it was similar. It worked out similarly to how yours worked out. There was they had a legitimate like priority listing for formal training where I was stationed for these formal training courses, right? Like if we get slots, here's who's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they would deliberate on these, like, I don't know, monthly, like, hey, here's the priority list for this class, this class, this class. I was on the list for rescue tech. I think I was, 3 or 4, who knows? But the first 2 or 3 guys, or however many were ahead of me, couldn't go for whatever reason. And then somebody like verbalized that, hey, they're getting out or something like that, And hey, I just I happened to be the top guy, and they're like, hey, do you want to go to rescue tech? I'm like, are you serious, dude? Like,
is that even a question?
Yeah, I was like, a 20-year-old freaking 2 striper or whatever. I'm like, oh yeah, it was like the best time ever. And of course, I was the guy that came back from rescue tech. I was like, everybody to the stall, man. Let me teach you some shit.
Yeah, exactly, and, dude. Classic.
Yeah, there's if there's any guys listening from my days back at Tyndall, man, they know exactly what I'm talking about. They still mess with me about that to this day. But, dude, I embrace rescue. I loved the technical rescue, the rope rescue aspects of it. We went pretty deep into confined space stuff at Tyndall. There were some really sharp dudes that knew confined space well, and we actually hired some guys that downtown provided confined space rescue standby services for some of the industrial processes in town. There's a paper mill in Panama City, Florida. And these dudes who did this every day to day, not only confined space, but other rope rescue, high angle capabilities, they came and taught us. So I went to rescue tech, got the Air Force version, which is great, was great. And then I got these guys confined space rescue stuff, and they taught you some stuff. They're like, don't worry about that. Do it this way, right? The safety knot, they're like, don't even, it's like if the rope's going to fail,
It's
it's going to fail right here, and a safety knot ain't going to do shit. So don't worry. I remember that. Anyways, I was deep into it, and anyways, fortunate to be at Tyndall to be a part of that. But I dove into the rope rescue, technical rescue stuff. I love that stuff.
Yeah, man. And then that was kind of like, it was similar to Tyndall too, Shaw being on the East Coast and stuff. We, get the hurricanes and stuff like that and floods and all that stuff. So I definitely remember being there for a couple tropical storms and kind of like because the year before I got to Shaw, they had like 1,000-year flood where they were like rescuing people out of base housing and like boats and stuff. And, so yeah, we would always when we were gonna get one of those, we'd get prepped up. We had a quint too, so we would always, start rigging stuff up if we had to like use the ladder to pick people up or, that stuff is just super fun and that was actually probably my first like subject with it being like similar to your story of like first subject of like really really like nerding out on just because it's so interesting and it's such a niche thing. And I think it's always funny too, like when you go to do your little confined space, um, you know, annual or biannual drills or whatever, at your base, there's always like, all right, who's rescue techs? And then, a couple people raise their hands, and then maybe even out of those couple, there's actually like maybe two guys that are actually like
They can make a 4-to-1. Yeah.
Yeah, they're the ones that are the guys that are actually proficient in the subject, and they have to do all the rigging and stuff. So
I'll tell you, man, there was a call we had, a low angle rescue, where there was a kid trapped in a car that went off the side of the road about 200 foot down this hill, and I was the incident commander for this call, and we were so tech rescue shorthanded that there were guys hooked into the system that weren't rescue technicians. Right? When push comes to shove, they knew the Stokes basket. They knew how to treat patients. They knew enough about rope rescue to survive. But we kind of had to make the decision, or I made the decision, and I think I got criticized for it. Nobody really said anything to my face, but I heard some rumblings like, oh, you should have never put that guy on the rope or whatever the case. I know that the rope's going to hold him. He's got a harness on. Carabiner works. He knows how to treat a patient. We're sending him down a hill. He's hooked into his system. I got guys up here.
See him the whole time.
Yeah, actually, they went beyond line of sight, but I that's just sometimes you got to make a decision. But yeah, you're left with few rescue technicians. But I don't care what your certification is when push comes to shove. I mean, I think it's important that you go to the formal training, and that you have the certification, and the department should invest in that. But when push comes to shove, like who can do it and who can't do it, whether or not you have the certification.
I think rescue also. I mean, I know we're on a deep side tangent, but I think rescue also they get like there's people that give it a bad rep because they're like, how many times have you done technical rescue?
Well, I mean, you can make that argument for anything. How often have you done a swift water and ice rescue? How many times have you went interior on a structure fire with entrapped victims? Like that's no excuse to not
be proficient.
You just you have to train, man. Like you have to. That's what our job is to be ready for those moments.
Exactly. But the cool thing about rescue tech is it kind of puts you in that outside the box mindset. And so, I mean, have I directly had to do like a high angle rescue? No, but there are bits and pieces from that class and skills that I learned in that class that I have used on real responses, and it's kind of the creativity portion of it, which is really cool to me, and I think it's really important. Like me and Whit one time, we had a car wreck. This lady like basically like Dukes of Hazzard her car over this ditch. I think it was like a T intersection, and she just didn't stop at the stop sign, and she just blew past it. But she went over the ditch into the woods, and so we had to. I don't know if we had to cut her out or not, but we had to package her in the Stokes basket, and then we used a ground ladder, a 20-foot, 4-foot ground ladder to put it across the ditch because it was long enough, and then basically bobsledded her in the Stokes basket across on the ladder. And I was like, that's not, your normal run of the mill
Yeah.
kind of
They don't teach
call.
that at rescue tech.
No, but
That's what firefighters
learning
are. They're problem solvers.
right. And it's that's what I think the biggest benefit from that class
So
is it
just
kind of
know
teaches
the
you.
equipment on your truck, know how to use it, know how to use your truck, practice with
Oh
it,
yeah.
and then you solve problems with what you got.
So moving on to just kind of we do have a planned topic. We're gonna get to it, I promise. But yeah, so it's 4 or 5
You're
years.
setting the stage for us.
Yeah, spent 4 or 5 years on the rescue truck. Ran, I mean, at Shaw, right? It's the hot truck, so you're going to all the medicals, all the IFEs. You're doing all the plane egress. You're going off base to do NVAs and extrications. Um, Dude, got countless EPU activations at Shaw. I don't know why. It was, just seemed to happen way more frequently. Um,
F-16s, man.
yeah, man, gotta love them. Favorite plane ever. Any smoker fire on base, so there was those are few and far between, but we did get a couple fires on base, some car fires, and one or two house fires while I was there. But speaking of EP activations, got two pretty kind of funny stories with those. Um, well, one's not funny. I guess it's more or less it was like a turned into be kind of serious. But we got an EPU activation one time, and it was me and Captain Myers, and they told us that there was only one person on there, but it was really a double seater. And so when we got up there to egress the pilot out and put him on the bottle, there's an NBC News reporter in the back, and he's just got a phone and just sticks it in our face, and he's recording the whole thing. So we're just like up on the ladder, and we're like just like shell shocked for a second of like, what the heck is this dude doing? And so then Cap kind of had to make the decision of like, well, he's a civilian, you're a military, you signed up for this. Maybe this wasn't necessarily protocol, especially if you only have one escape bottle. So he put the civilian on the bottle, told pilot, "Hey, dude, hold your breath," and we had to get both of them out. But that's just kind of in that time compressed decision, or time compressed environment. That's the decision that got made.
Man, I would have went with the pilot, I think.
Really,
Yeah, just protecting the mission resources, man.
that's that's
I mean,
true.
the news reporter can't fly the plane.
I mean, that's hey. When you go down
There you
range,
go.
man, that's that rescue mindset you need to be in, which is true. You got to start training those decisions. And then the second one, man, this young, I don't know if he was a captain or a LT, but he he got he got jazzed up, man. Like it scared him, I guess. It was his first activation, and so he just straight up unasked the plane, like he just left it on. Like he got, like we got him out on the bottle, but like he didn't turn it off. And I guess I don't really necessarily know what my crew chief did, or he just wasn't thinking about, turning the plane off first. But we're all like standing by like Chief Two, like, cool guys, don't look at explosions type. Like we just got this pilot out kind of thing. And we're just bullshitting. And then like Chief Two's like, is the plane on? And we're like, oh shit. He's like, we should probably turn that off. So I had to actually like go up on there and turn the plane off, which was pretty cool.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So that's my two cool stories with EPU activations.
Did it turn off like it was supposed to?
Dude, because I was a young staff, and so I was still, when I first put staff on, we had some civilian heavy kind of dynamics too of I wasn't necessarily crewing right away. I still drove a lot when I was a baby staff.
Sure. Yep.
And so I was driving still, but I was still to the point like where I was an NCO, and I was teaching classes, and with me being on the rescue truck for 4 or 5 years at that point, I had a very good grasp and taught a lot. I typically taught the F-16 classes, and so dude, same exact thing. Like got up there, was like, holy shit, we're doing this for real, and like just said the steps out like verbally, and then I grabbed the throttle, turned it all the way back, turned it off, and I heard the plane go blah 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 blah, and I literally audibly was like, "Holy shit, this works!" Like in real time, right? Because like I was like, I'm teaching this stuff, but till that point, it was theory. Now
Sure.
I know I know it
Sure.
works.
Yeah.
So that was cool. And then did my little stint in dispatch for 8 months. I already brought that up. My one sole in flight, because this was during COVID, was the F-16 crash that happened at Shaw back in 21,
That was a
22,
nighttime
20.
mission, right?
Yep, 2020. Um, so came in, uh, very just like that classic like gut feeling of like this is not right. Um, I want to say I have like a picture of my notes, my little yellow legal pad too. Um, but came in, I want to say they said broken landing gear, which kind of triggered that like intuition of like this is not like
Good.
this is not normal or routine because
Sure.
normally it would be like landing gear malfunction
Sure.
or
Sure.
something along that line, right? So got off the crash phone, spun around in my chair. Flight chief for security forces, they were all kind of bullshitting because our dispatch was in BDOC, and I told the flight chief, tech or master, I think. I was like, "Hey, sir, this plane's probably about to crash. You're gonna want to go out on the airfield." And he's like, "Shut up, dude. No, it's not." And I was like, "No, I'm being dead ass serious. Like, you need to get out there." And he was like, "Oh, oh, okay." And so, sure as shit, the events happen, plane crashes. Um, and I don't really know. I'd have to ask ICs and so the guys that were out there of like why the EOC never got stood up. But it didn't. And so I had to basically do
Fog of
everything.
war.
It basically, and so I had two really good. So basically, it was two senior airmen and a staff sergeant that ran that whole incident from the we'll
I'm sure
call
the
it
EOC was eventually stood up, sometime after your
during.
shift was over, potentially.
Yeah, probably when like all the other, you know, a- agencies started having to come in. But for the initial 12 hours, it was, me, the desk sergeant, and then the other senior airman that was working the alarms for BDOC, and those dudes crushed it. We worked really well together. Probably called every person on that entire base that night. Um, but yeah, got it done, man. It was it was interesting for sure. Another perspective too. Um, like even have on my notes, I viewed dispatch as a punishment, but I learned so much from being on that other side of the curtain, and then really seeing what it takes or what goes into, being a part of like, one of those type 3 incidents and running how much other agencies, play effect in that response. So that's pretty wrapped up my time at Shaw. I'm not going to hit too much on Eielson because I'm 23 to present. Best decision I made because I kind of got in that when you get stuck in somewhere for that long of a period, it's real easy to get stuck in that mindset of I probably had some conversations with individuals that outranked me that I would probably have changed now from having a different perspective of, um, using my words a little more wisely. But that's like we said,
Live and learn, man.
it's called growth, right? Um, but Eielson was the best decision I made. It got me out of that mindset and really, kind of showed me that okay, yeah, you don't freaking know everything. I got to learn this place. Got to learn how these guys do things, and just really shifted my mindset to being, being more open minded and trying to just make each place that you go a little bit better. Um, Also, just a great assignment too. So far, I've had house fires, codes, 35 crash, another 35 fire, 16 crash, F-15 aborted takeoff. Brake fires with all the red flags. So the mission is really cool as well, and
It
it's
has the
been great.
potential to deliver some responses.
For sure, and it's just like I feel like Eielson kind of made me really appreciate the Air Force Fire Service because of the ARF responses generated from red flag and stuff, where Shaw, is a little bit more. We
A
like to
slower
lean
flight
in.
line.
We it's busy, but it's not. It's just like we lean so hard into the off base response of like that's the mindset. But with all that being said, man, like the whole purpose of this is like some of these experiences, and we're gonna get into some more serious calls right here. Kind of really like showed me or led me into being a student of the game, right? I had good, like I mentioned before, I had really good mentors, showed me where good information was. But I started really like being a student. So once I got promoted to staff, right, and I started taking over the engine, that was like a very new experience for me because I had been on one, I was one-sided more or less on the rescue truck for so long. Um, and so I kept seeing these videos or pictures of like super vent limited fires of like, there's just smoke chugging out of each orifice of this thing. And I just was like, I have zero idea what to do about that. And I'm in charge now. And now I have to be responsible for three other individuals. And so that was very, very scary to me, just because it wasn't necessarily that I was afraid to fail and like maybe look bad, but it was more or less I was afraid to, get somebody hurt that I was responsible for. And so that was one of those instances, right, that I asked Wit, like, hey man, like I don't know what to do with this. And he, sent me down a rabbit hole, and that kind of just really opened my eyes to like the level of instruction and what you are coding people to have in a really, really stressful environment, right? And that information should be as tight as possible. Um, Especially if you're the one instructing, right? You should be aiming to give people the best information possible, that they can have, um, in that stressful, time compressed environment so that they can make, good decisions and smart decisions. Um, so, and just like, so, like, I got a wreck, right? Um, Unfortunately, it was a fatal wreck, double head-on collision. Um, but it was a really, really, it was a really, really um, technical extrication, right? I mean, it was the only wreck that I had in my entire career. It took, I think, 45 minutes for us to cut this kid out. And he was essentially upside down, and the dash had molded around his leg, and so he was basically dangling on the, his head was on the roof, or torso was on the roof section because the car was flipped upside down. And so it was the only wreck that I had in my entire career that the the life flight landed on the ground before we had them cut out of the car. And so with that being said, right, and unfortunately that young man didn't make it. And so the very next weekend, we go to a conference, go to extrication conference, and learn a tactic that we could have used on that very wreck. And it's just super weird how stuff like that happens. Um, but it's also, that hindsight 2020 is like, dang man, I wish I would have had that information
Mhm.
for that response. Um, which is, there's nothing I could have done, in that moment to change that. But when you look at the lens of that, of these skills are important, and people's lives are at stake sometimes, right? And so it just kind of reiterates of like why getting outside of the bubble of your four walls of your fire department is so important, because there's so much information out there for free, and that that are FDIC instructors, top notch subject matter experts that guys are putting out there. You just gotta want it, you know. Are we good? Because it's kind of being a little
No,
laggy.
yeah, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
The video's lagging, but I can hear you fine.
Okay, cool. So then moving in, so this was kind of like really truly the call that really pivoted and changed my life forever. Um, I had a fatal car fire with a victim that could have potentially been saved. Um, and it was, looking back at it, and it's another hindsight 2020, right? So, have a fatal car fire that, like I said, victim could have potentially we could have probably pulled him out, maybe to, did CPR and got him back, because when we cut this kid out, man, he was burned, but he was not like a crispy critter to say. Like, I know that's maybe not the best term to say, but like,
Right.
he wasn't it wasn't a charred body. He had third-degree burns, but he 1000% died from smoke inhalation. But so then I take a search class from Cobb County. It's called the Search Reformation, and they kind of like, we were very big on like, the whole risk thing, um and I get it, and it's there for a purpose, but it's very hard for you to say what is survivable or not. Like, that's really not up to you. What your job is to do the biggest or to do what you could do with your equipment, with your personnel, that's going to have the biggest impact on the fire ground in that very moment, right?
Right.
And so with that being said, right, I take this class, and like, dude, they're pulling kids and stuff out of like houses that are just like, floor to ceiling fire and stuff, and granted, they have to put it out with the line first, but they're still going in and grabbing these kids. And so I just kept thinking back to that night of like, I had no I had no slide for that moment. I remember my buddy, he was on the line, I was backing him up, and it didn't even register in my brain to even check if somebody was in the car until, he hit him in the back of the head with a stream. And I was just like, oh shit, someone is in there. And then it was just, I didn't freeze, as in like, we kept going on, but I definitely didn't make a decision. Like, my decision making ability at that point in time was out the window. It was just kind of like fumbling through the rest of the call. And so, and then the IC made the decision to leave the body in there, because it's now we're doing the whole evidence thing and all that, and that's, maybe checklist driven or whatnot. But um it sucks being on the backside of a call like that, of where you have to question if you did the right things or not, and it was, a fire of consequence. And
Sure.
so that's really, what drove me to like do stuff like this, and to be, as good as I can at this job. And really, it started getting me into teaching as well, and instructing, and trying to give the guys under me, whether they want to listen or not, because not everybody wants to listen, and that's okay, because that's just the name of the game. But so I started to kind of stop focusing on quantity and started kind of focusing on quality. And because there are guys that are hungry and they want that information, and they want to be as good as they possibly can be at this job. And so typically, and those people will gravitate towards you, right? And so, through the times of like, kind of like going through this, and trying to, kind of like you said, like with the rescue stuff, it'll be like, I take a class and I come back and I'd be like, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, like, and just like trying to shove it down people's throats. That also made people resistive, right? So
Sure.
like, there is a pendulum of, a balance. And so that's kind of what I was getting at with the quality versus quantity, of like, you can't just shove a water hose down people's throats, but there will be people that will want to learn from you, especially if you're coming from like a good spot like that.
Sure. There's a leadership lesson there too, is, our tendency, especially when you're a young leader, a new leader, and even people kind of carry this habit into throughout their careers, is to tell people exactly what to do because I'm the boss. because of my experience, come over here and do this because I said so, in other words, but not necessarily like
Mm-hmm.
that. And the most effective way is being competent in a way that people want to approach you. And then people learning things because they want to learn, right? So
Mm-hmm.
sharing your experiences and having humility and saying, I didn't know what to do in this moment is going to encourage people to want to know that so that they don't put themselves in that same circumstance, right? So that they don't end up not knowing what to do in a particular moment, right? So really the leadership lesson is being indirect in the way that you lead people and letting them come to the conclusion on their own instead of going to them and say, hey, this is important. You're going to need to know this. Yeah, sometimes that's effective and important, but the most effective way is letting them come to that conclusion.
Yeah, dude. I think Aaron Fields has a quote. I think he hits the nail on the head with it. He's leadership's not a push, it's a pull. And so when exactly like you said, man, when you don't let or when you're not shoving things or like you're not telling people directly, but you're letting people come to you because they want to, that's when, the rubber really starts to meet the road.
Right. They're going to be more engaged and more
Yeah, just
receptive. And
1000%. So with that, right? So then that kind of really made me, those experiences and stuff really started making me, have a lens for what, the value of human life, what what risking a lot really means, right? Um, and so then, like I said, is like I started really studying, right? So then I kind of learned, you know, I took this class I guess it's probably about 2 years ago. It's called Training for Performance. A very, very good class. Um, Chief Jess Young, I think is her name. She's down in the lower part of Alaska, but she came up to Fairbanks. But she kind of really started, kind of like things I'd heard from other people, she compiled into one place, and it all kind of has the same thing to do with like, the stress that we experience on the fire ground. So the Yerkes-Dodson law, the bell curve, it's for human performance, and it's basically your state of arousal or state of stress is going to greatly dictate your performance. And so we can look at that from the fire ground stress aspect, but you can also look at it from the training aspect as well, which is what she kind of did a really great job of the analogy, and learning that there's different levels of training, right? So for the stress portion, right, or like the fire ground, understanding that we have two types of stress that we encounter on the fire ground. We have physiological and psychological stress. And those things are going to trigger what's called acute stress reactions, and those are drastically based upon your heart rate. And so in which I started wearing a whoop. I don't know if you know what a whoop is, but
yeah, I know it is.
um, dude, I think that has been some of the most interesting stuff. Um, Starting to collect some data from these calls and like really go through my heart rate and just be able to quantify some of those numbers and on real life responses.
Yeah, I love
It's
that
very,
initiative. And we were doing that at Eielson, and there's other organizations at Eielson that were doing it. I'm sure, or I
hmm
know that there's organizations at other places that are doing something similar where you track the um, the
metrics, yeah.
biometrics of firefighters and how things are different while they're on duty compared to when they're off duty. And it's just really eye-opening to look at what happens to a firefighter under stress. It's inherent to the job, but an accumulation of that over a career or even a few years is going to have side effects, impacts. And so, yeah, quantifying that and having data to point to why firefighters experience their occupational stresses or what those occupational stresses are going to do to you physiologically over time. It's just powerful stuff, man. I'm really interested in that.
Yeah, man, it's super interesting too, and especially like there's no way to get around it, right? So essentially what happens, right, when you have acute stress response, right? Your sympathetic nervous system is having a response because your body is elevating your heart rate to be able to deal with
Survive, yeah.
the said threat, right? And so
Well, I
typically,
think there is a way to not necessarily work around it, but, and I think you know the answer to this, but there is a way to curb the physiological and psychological effects of a high stress call, and it's to practice and put yourself in similar circumstances in training in,
yeah,
mimic those circumstances so that when you are faced with the actual thing, it's less impactful, I guess is the best way to say it.
yeah, which you're 1000% right too. So typically, right, when you get a call of some kind of significance, no matter what, your body is going to raise your heart rate up to around 115 to 145 beats per minute, right? And that's just to get you in that optimal primal zone to deal with whatever you need to deal with. Then that's going to be like kind of like the peak of the curve, right? Um, where you're at optimal performance.
Hmm.
And so when you, like you're saying, right, if you're faced with something you're not familiar with, or something's not going right, or there's the the manual or Marine Corps manual warfighting talks about like things that they encounter on the battlefield, and if you just change battlefield to fireground, it's the like verbatim what we deal with, right? So friction, fluidity, uncertainty, all these things um, happens on every response, right? Um, but like you're saying, like when you're not conditioned for that, you're going to start your heart rate is going to start to go down the back side of that curve, where your performance is going to fall down or degrade due to your stress response. Is now your heart rate is elevated, and now you're starting to have biological or physiological responses that your body's programmed to have. And so another challenge that we face too, not only are we dealing with the psychological stress of calls, pressure, um, decision making, uncertainty. We also have 100 pounds of gear on our body, so we are kind of combating both physiological stress and psychological stress at the same time. So that's why training, um, pushing yourself, being physically fit, doing training in your gear specifically, to get conditioned to the heat and the weight, is it's apparent. You have to do it.
Yeah, or you're a liability, right?
Really, I mean, honestly, because like there
You're an
is a
occupational liability.
there. I hear it a lot. Because we are very good at problem solving, and we are very good at overcoming friction typically. Um, but that's not the way to view it. We should strive to be as prepared as possible, because that's just not the way your brain works under stress, actual stress. So the mindset of like we'll figure it out when we get there, I just can't get behind it, man. I really can't. Like yes, we are going to figure it out when we get there, but that's not what I'm gonna base my whole pre-response off of. I'm going to train for as many situations as I can to be proficient in as many situations as I can. So then I'm not having to use cognitive bandwidth to figure out that.
Sure, you
I
want to
can
put it
just
into the Rolodex so that you have something there when the circumstance comes.
right. And so that kind of leads us into a good segue. And this will kind of polish this up too of like what we're the entire episode. But so that kind of led me to, Aaron Fields does the nozzle forward, which I think you've taken. So he uses what's called the Fitz Posner model for skill acquisition. So Paul Fitz and Michael Posner are professors of psychology, from the University of Oregon, and they wrote the textbook called Human Performance, and it's designed to introduce frameworks and understand the complexities of human performance, because it's just exactly like we just said. there's so many variables that actually really go into being able to perform out on the, whether it's sports, whether it's firefighting, wrestling, it doesn't matter, right? It's just human performance as a whole. And so they broke it down, which is going to sound a lot like crawl, walk, run, but it's a little bit more in depth, right? And I think Chief Eric Wheaton has a really good analogy to make it a little more firefighter friendly. But the three phases are cognitive, associative, and autonomous. And so, really, what I won't go too much into it because it gets a little nerdy, but the way that Chief Eric Wheaton breaks it down is mechanics, consistency, and complexity or intensity. And so, what I see a lot of times we do is we'll do very, very basic mechanics, and then we'll jump straight to intensity. And
Mm-hmm.
we do that with new guys, and we do that with drills all the
Mm-hmm.
time. And so
Mm-hmm.
understanding that if you are placing intensity before mechanics and intensity or consistency,
Mm-hmm.
the opportunity or the ability to be successful is going to be drastically less. And so, like, I'll give you an example.
You're also going to
And
discourage people very
one
fast.
1000%,
How
right?
do you
And so
not know
there's
how to do this or whatever the case?
exactly right. And so, like, that happens all the
Right.
time,
It's
right? So
common. Yeah.
um like F-16 egress, right? Like, I've been a part of some exercises where like guys have bits and chunks of the information, but it's not smooth, right? And then people will be like, well, why didn't you know that? And it's like, well, they haven't practiced those skills to a consistent level to where they can do it at a full speed drill
Sure. They're not there
without
yet. Yeah.
without messing up. And
Right.
so, anyways, like new guys, right? And it's kind of like a rite of passage or whatever, and I get it, but like we'll do this whole giant hose maze in the stalls and like, put all this shit in the way
Yeah.
and
Stressful
make them crawl
environment. Yeah.
make them crawl through tires and shit, and then we won't even teach them that how to do smooth bump to the pump. Like we won't even give them the crowns to. We just want to see them fail because we think it's funny, or we
Right.
just want to do that because that's what happened to us
Yeah.
when we were new. And so there is a time and place for the stress inoculation, right? So like
Sure.
that shouldn't go away, but
Right.
you should also give the people
The
the
foundation.
mechanics,
Yeah.
right, the mechanics to be able to do that,
And
and
give
then
them
also
space and opportunity to practice and be
r-
consistent.
right, and so then also do the consistency, which is the biggest portion that's typically missed, is the middle portion. And so there's a book called The Talent Code, which is a very, very good book about how to basically be a good instructor or how to develop talent. And the three, or you could even put, I've kind of changed it to develop competency. And the three ways to develop talent is what's called deep practice, ignition, and master coaching. And so deep practice is going to be our consistency portion. But essentially, like people say muscle memory, what you're doing is you're insulating so say you have dots in your brain between known things, right? Really what you're doing is insulating your neural pathways with what's called myelin. And so it's no different from any kind of other wire. You're insulating that so that that electrical current can fire faster. And so the more myelin you have wrapped around that circuit, the faster it's going to go. So that's really what's happening when you're doing muscle memory is you've just practiced that thing enough times that you don't have to think about it. That electrical impulse just fires immediately. And so, with that being said, is like that's why the consistency portion is the biggest piece of the pie.
I think that's true with so many other things too. I mean, I'm a runner, right? And
Hmm.
if I ever want to be a good runner or be the best version of myself runner, like to get to that point, I have to consistently run. And we're talking about months and years. not so much of the the psychological aspect, which that's part of it. It's that
Hmm.
physiological, those pathways, those neural pathways, I guess, to use the same example, and condition my muscles for that particular load, condition my heart so that my stroke volume, the amount of blood my left ventricle pushes to the rest of my body, is more and more and more efficient to get my heart to that point, to get my lungs to that tidal volume capacity, to get my red blood cells to the optimal level of oxygen transport capacity, the hemoglobin to the optimal level of oxygen transport capacity. You have to do it over and over and over and over again, right? And that's just running. That's one example. But the same thing applies for anything that you want to be a quote unquote expert or good at.
Hmm.
You have to practice those pathways over and over and over. Yeah. So that I think that you hit it on the head when you said the piece that we miss most often is consistency, and I think that there's a lot of variables to play. There's a lot of things that we're going at a faster than probably appropriate pace in
Hmm.
our training pipelines. We're expected to fill positions sooner than we should, right? It's the nature of the business. So I think
Yeah.
that that's partly to blame. But I don't think that that's an excuse that's not an excuse. As a leader, you have to recognize that we're on an accelerated pathway and work to make sure that you make space and time for people to practice consistency.
And your example with running is very, very good because exactly what you are kind of alluding to. And unfortunately, the consistency portion is sometimes boring.
Oh yeah,
And
that's a
so
great point.
it to do it redundantly.
Right.
Um, and so
And
that's
even while doing it, you may not notice that you're making a difference. That's another aspect of it.
right.
It's like, well, am I really making a difference today, man? Because I don't feel any different than I did yesterday about it, right? It's like, keep getting up and keep doing the same thing. It will come in time. You'll get better and better and better incrementally, slowly over time. One day, 4 months down the road, you'll wake up and be like, you'll notice a difference. You know what I mean? So,
Right, 1000%. And two, unfortunately, like you have to do the consistency portion, or I like to lump mechanics and consistency together because obviously they're paired together. Um, but when you're building it to a consistent level too, is like you now whatever skill it is, you understand all the points of like friction of where you're going to
sure.
get some feedback, and you understand how to kind of navigate those situations as to that's where you're making it a smooth skill, instead of being, because like don't get me wrong, there are times that we do drills and stuff and people are successful but they're more fumbling through it rather than it being like, wow, that was a really clean rep.
Sure, you can get
um
lucky.
Right, a lot of
And
times.
some
And
people, let's face it, are naturally better
hmm.
in certain whether
Oh,
it
for
be
sure.
physically better, naturally physically better, like they just have they were gifted with a great genetic makeup for whatever. Maybe they don't have to. Maybe they're just strong, right? Or
Hmm.
fast or very smart. They have photographic memories. We see people like that all the time, but those are exceptions. Those people are
Right.
rare. And even those people can only rely on that ability for so long, right? There's things that they're not going to be good at that they're going to have to practice.
1000%. And so just the last kind of point to wrap this up, and why doing skill acquisition in this format or this model has been really, really um, beneficial, is because also with going through the mechanics, consistency, and intensity, that also is like they have I have a picture of it from my class, but um, it kind of goes with, there's a performance line and then there's a working memory line. So like as you're new to a skill, your cognitive demand to be able to perform that is going to be higher.
Mm.
And as through time, right, as your performance gets better and you get more consistent and more smooth, you start to operate in that autonomous phase of where you don't even have to think about it. And so why that's important for especially all of our basic skills, is like that's what the foundation of the job is. That's what you're going to use on the call, right? And so this is kind of what I see the most in training, or most in on actual fires when people get stressed out. If you haven't built and I know we've said this 1,000 times, right? But like if you're having to think about putting your mask on, you're thinking about putting your mask on. You're not thinking about what the actual incident is, or that what your 360 is, or then you start to miss shit. Your glove's not, you left your glove at the truck or whatever it may be, right? And so once we train these skills to that autonomous phase, we're taking that off of our bandwidth, and we can start to use our brain, or our mental capacity for other things, right? That we might need to have, right? Or we might miss something, right? Maybe the fire vented itself on the Charlie side, or maybe it started on the on the outside and now it worked its way inside. So maybe I'm going to actually bring the line to the back side of the house instead of going in the front door. Things like that, is what I typically see, especially with rookies too, of like the gear thing. It seems redundant, but if they don't train that stuff, they're eating up mental bandwidth just putting their stuff on quick.
Yeah, man, that encapsulates it great. I think that's the best way to wrap up that piece of what you talked about, is to get to a place with everything within your scope of responsibility to the greatest extent possible. Get to a place where you don't have to think about how to do it.
1,000%.
So that you can save that bandwidth for those
Anomalies,
scenarios
really.
those scenarios that somebody, launched a car over a hill and you have to use a Stokes basket and a ladder to get them out, or there's a complicated vehicle extrication, or whatever the case is, so that you have your mental bandwidth for those moments.
1,000%, man. That's what we're striving to do, at least, more or less. But yeah, man, that pretty much wraps everything up as far as what we hope that tied in. I know it was a long-winded
It's all good.
rabbit hole to get there, but that's kind of what we set the
It
foundation.
takes you an hour and 10 minutes to get to a point.
Yeah, one singular of just train the basics until you can't do them wrong.
It's all good stuff. It's all good stuff.
1,000%.
And I think a lot of people can relate, man. But yeah, we're happy to have you on as a host, man. And a large reason why you were selected among many quality people was that you are invested in the fire service. And it's pretty clear when you speak that you invest in yourself, you invest in the guys, you invest in the department. And it's just a never ending learning process. And just kind of wanted to bring that to this podcast, because that's what podcasts are for, I think, is to teach other people, live vicariously through others, and to really, as a host, kind of try to bring the best out of the guest. And I think that if you're well read into the fire service, if you know what the hell you're talking about, to the greatest extent possible, then you're going to ask inquisitive, thoughtful questions. And so that was really the intent there. So it's great to have you on, man. Thank you for sharing your experiences at Shaw, and having some humility and saying, hey, I man, it could have went different had I known what to do. And I think all of us have examples, dude, for sure.
1,000.
And that's what it's all about, and yeah, just sharing those experiences so that maybe somebody else doesn't have to go through the same thing. I don't know if you know who Magnus Carlsen is. Do you know who Magnus Carlsen is? I think that's how you say his name.
Sounds familiar.
He's the chess player. He was like a young prodigy chess player, right? And there's an example that I hear used by some in leadership circles as he was this young prodigy, and everybody's like, how is this dude so good? He's a young teenager, he's a teenager, and he's crushing these old dudes at chess. And the reason he was so good was because he learned, I guess in chess, they have like log books that explain moves made during matches, right? And how people were able to defeat their opponents and yada, yada, yada. So there's this like body of work that this kid was able to study. So he's obviously gifted at chess, and he studied this body of work of other people who are really good at chess. And so he showed up to the chess scene already good, but with also knowing what everybody else knew, right? And so he was just crushing souls out there on the chess field or whatever, and
chess floor.
on the chess floor, whatever you want to call it, the chess table. And he's still out there, man. You'll see, like, if you're on social media, you'll see little reels of him. I do. Maybe he's in my algorithm for a reason, but anyways, I thought that was a kind of a good analogy. You know, it's like you can learn so much vicariously through others' experiences, through reading, through podcasts, through videos, in addition to your own experience.
1,000. Yeah, I mean, dude, I keep saying 1,000%.
I like it,
but no, that's one of the points that I learned from Jay Bonifield too. But is like it's no different from watching game film. Like you can watch a response, you can watch a helmet cam, but really you need that coach or that mentor to kind of proctor guys to say, hey, this is what the stuff you need to be looking for. These are the things you're trying to observe so you can make decisions based upon these conditions, right? Or, you know, like this is a bidirectional flow path right here. This is what that looks like. You know, so instead of just watching a video of a fire, be like, oh, it's a fire, it's cool or whatever. Actually take the time to be like, you know, do some smoke reading, see some of those real examples too. You got to. It's the only way, because you're not going to get enough fires just on base, and really, it's no different either for a lot of civilian departments. Like not everyone's FDNY.
Really not. Yeah, it's really not.
It's like not everyone's FDNY getting you know, sets and reps all the time. So you got
even their sets and reps are different from what our sets and reps
1,000%,
right? Like they're not dealing with single family dwellings for the most part. No. I'm sure in some cases, but especially in Manhattan or some other the metropolitan like populated areas, dude, they're talking about high rises, and that's a whole different ball game. They don't have they don't have 200 foot pre-connects. Maybe they do, but the hose are 200 feet. Did I say 20?
And so that they do stuff completely differently, and that is an important thing to do, especially if you take a class. I will say this as well. I got one other point after this, and then I'll shut up. But if you take a class, right, take in what you can take in, but also realize that like you might not be able to operate that way. There's going to be bits and pieces of it that may be useful and that you can apply to your department. And that's your job to be that subject matter expert of your department and take it and make it be useful for y'all and mold it into something that's, you know, digestible for your personnel.
Yeah, I think that goes both ways too. And Aaron Fields hit on this in the class that I attended. It's different for every fire district, every municipality, every locality around the American Fire Service. Like and so I think as an instructor, you have to understand that, like, and have the humility to say, this is my experience, and these are the environments that I lived in, right? I was in FDNY, or I was in Phoenix, or I was in Dallas, or I was in rural Kansas, where we didn't have hydrant systems or whatever the case. And you as the learner, as the student, need to recognize this. So you don't have to take everything as gospel. Take those little bits and pieces of what you think could be valuable. Like one thing Aaron Fields like applies in his training, or did, I don't know if he's still teaching, but like they have an essentially unlimited water source in Seattle or in Washington, right? Like, and his whole thing was just dumping water, right? Like on fire. So his training or his approach is just a lot of water is my point, right? And that may not work in a drought infested Arizona, like rural area, you know what I mean? Or so anyways, yeah, taking what you know through your experiences and where you are and applying the good and
perfect real world example of that. Just the other day, a couple weeks ago, we got a mutual aid down to Solcha, which is south of the base. And most of Fairbanks is north of the base, and it's a very, very small volunteer department. And we were first due, and But having that experience from fighting county firefighting and at South Carolina, I understood. Um, I was on the ISO truck. One of the other chiefs was the actual. Ended up being. We had a couple chiefs, so I ended up getting to
That's what
play.
happens, man, when fires
Right.
ring out at Eielson.
Right. So there was no real need for me to be the direct safety guy, but so I just kind of just bumped down and started helping the guys. But my understanding from county firefighting of like we're not going to have any water for minutes, right? And
Sure.
so the when I pulled up, the guys were pulling the deuce and a half because it was a well involved structure, and I was like, put that deuce and a half up, bro. You're gonna cash our tank in 3 seconds. Like, pull the pre-connect and let's do what we can do with that. Um, so that was like a little bit of a pivot, but like having that experience to be able to make those decisions is important for sure, and
Yeah, that
understanding your dynamic.
that example is a great one for Air Force firefighters too, because we are used to a hydrant system, right? And
Hmm.
our reflexes. Well, that I like the fact that they pulled the 2.5.
I do
Because
too.
I don't think that's a normal reflex. The normal reflex is inch and 3/4, no matter what, right? Like I see
Yeah,
fire, inch 3/4.
yeah.
So I like that they pulled the 2.5. But like you said, that in a water limited environment, maybe not.
Yeah. And the reason he did that is because they had a similar fire a couple years ago, and that was his Rolodex slide,
There you
deuce and a
go.
half, trash fire.
Nice,
And so
nice.
I get it. And like, but last little tidbit before we hop off, especially because it's a topic that is near and dear to my heart, especially with I didn't get too far in the weeds with some of those calls, and like I said, the fatal car fire that definitely tugged on the strings for a while, and I had to kind of really sit there and chew on that for uh, some years. Honestly, man, of like that bothered me for so long. Of like feeling like I really let that kid and his family down. Um, and I think it's just only natural to feel that way because you want to do the best that you can, right? But the Mission Critical Teams Institute, they have a really, really good paper called Residue, and it kind of deals with some of the traumatic stuff, and really he actually got it from Tom Hardy, and actors that like really like delve into their character, and you kind of use the example of like if I'm Bane, I can't be another character. For if I'm doing a new movie, I still can't be Bane from Batman. So I have to like process that residue and be able to kind of like come out on the other side clean. Um, and so the example of like with the traumatic stress stuff is like you kind of get a say in how you process some of that stuff. And so the way that I kind of was able to do that is to be able to share my experience with other people, and saying treat it as a learning experience is terrible, but that's truly what it is like if I just sit there and dwell on like, well, I had this terrible experience and don't really do anything with it, then it's not, it's just negative. But if I'm able to teach other people and maybe allow them to not have that experience, then that experience becomes somewhat useful. And so, just check that paper out though. It's really good. Helped me a little bit with some of that PTSD stuff. So it's always a
Yeah,
good
man.
message.
That's a great way to deal with those experiences. Is It's a great way to cope. Is to let me share with what I did. Right, like you're
Mm.
reliving it, and I don't know. Yeah, it's positive that maybe somebody else doesn't have to go through the same thing. But I love it. All right,
Yeah,
Austin.
man.
Well, we covered a lot, and again, appreciate you bringing all this stuff forward. It's a good episode.
Yes, sir.
All
Till
right,
next time.
till next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fire Dog Podcast. If you found value in today's conversation, please take a moment to rate and review the show on your podcast platform of choice. It's one of the best ways to help us reach more firefighters and leaders across the fire service. This episode was supported by Roll Call Coins, telling the stories of fire departments and teams through premium custom challenge coins. Learn more at rollcallcoins.com. It was also supported by AOS Services, helping fire departments stay mission ready with worldwide firefighting equipment compliance. Find out more at aosservicesinc.com. You can find more episodes at firedog.us or wherever you listen to podcasts, and be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at the Firedog Podcast. That is the Fire DAWG Podcast. Sharing this episode with your friend, coworker, or someone in your firehouse helps these conversations reach the people who would benefit most. This is Matt Wilson with Austin Perry. Until next time, stay safe.